Hey everybody, Max Rich here, and today I want to teach you something really useful that will help your improvisation. Because let's face it, all of us love playing solos and all of us like to improvise. It's one of the most fun parts about playing guitar. But a lot of people get stuck in sort of like wandering and fumbling and like looking for right notes and like looking for ways to play phrases that sound convincing. And today I'm going to show you a really cool kind of a hack that will make your phrases way more convincing and way more melodic and vocal-esque, right? When you think about it, what are we doing when we're playing guitar? We're trying to somewhat, especially if we're like trying to make the guitar cry and sing, we're trying to like emulate what a singer does with their voice. So why not actually apply what a singer does to the instrument? And essentially it all comes down to articulation, how you attack a note, right? So if I'm gonna play, let's say, a D on the G string right here, I can just play the D, right? But if I want to imply a little bit more musicality, the way I get into the D really matters. Like for example, I can hammer on into my note, I could pull off, I could slide. And if I apply those concepts to all of my target notes throughout a phrase, I can really create a much more musical and meaningful way to play music. And so like the first example is just if we take a C major scale, right? Like that, just, you know, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If we were to use hammer-on articulation into each note, this boring sounding scale begins to sound a little bit more interesting. Right? Now it's still just quarter note rhythm, bum, 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 but we're doing a quick little hammer on a quick little grace note from the note below it. And in this case, so if I'm hammering on, if I'm starting the note on, or starting the scale on C, I'm going to do a quick hammer on from B to C. And if you, in the link below, there's a link to the tab, so go ahead and pull up the tab so you can see what I'm talking about. In any case, so I'm going to like hammer on to my target note, which is C, from the note below. And that's the way I get into C. And then the next note is D, so I'm going to hammer on into D from the note below. And then onward into E, F, G, A, B, C. Right, so the trick to this, the trick to using this type of articulation idea is you have to think ahead, not where you're starting, but you have to think about the note that you're trying to end up on. You have to think about your target note, right? So I'm not thinking about B when I'm doing this, I'm thinking about C. And I'm just getting there via the previous note in the scale, right? And the same thing can be applied through pull-offs, right? So if I'm playing the same scale, but I want to get into the C from above, I could pull off. And then the same thing applies. Right? So I'm still like getting into each note and playing the scale in sequential order from C to C, but the way I'm playing each note differs, whether I'm using hammer-on or pull-off. And you can mix them, right? You can like... Right? And the more change of directions you get, whether you're doing a hammer-on or a pull-off, I accidentally added a slide in there just because it's a habit, but we'll get to that in a second. The more change of directions you have, like rather than approaching everything from below or everything from above, mixing them up really helps create a vocal sounding way of playing, right? Because when you think about vocalists, they don't necessarily always hit the very center of every pitch every single time. Rather, they'll scoop into it or slide down into it. And they approach these notes very differently than a guitarist would. A guitarist, you know, your standard guitar player who's playing a pentatonic scale might just fumble around. Something like that and hit da 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 da, like hitting the center of every pitch, and it's okay, but it's not great. It's not a very melodic way of playing, right? So using articulation will help you change that. And then if you take that and you start applying licks, like so if we did the hammer-on one, right, where we're approaching everything with a hammer-on, and we took a simple lick like, if we took a simple lick like that, so I'm basically just climbing up a C scale idea here up on the 10th fret. Right? So this is going to be our first lick, right? And in this case, we're going to use hammer ons. So those are all my target notes. But I haven't used any articulation. It's not a bad lick, but when I add articulation, it changes it quite a bit. Right? So now those are all just hammer-ons, and I'm just getting into these notes individually, thinking about my target note. So for example, I start just on the C, and then my next note is an E, and instead of just playing it, I go like that, and it does a nice little scoop. And then my next two notes, I don't use any articulation, I just play the G to the A. So instead of, I get, right? And what you get when you get this hammer-on, this articulated hammer-on, is a quick little staccato note. Ba-da-ba-da, right? So it puts a little pause in there because you have to adjust the fingering and you have to move in time, so it creates like an automatic staccato rather than just climbing up with your middle finger. So a lot of this has to do with not only how you approach it, what articulation you're using, but also the fingering involved in having to do that articulation. That creates these like abrupt stops and abrupt staccatos that end up changing the melodic phrase and making it a little bit nicer. And then instead of this, where I'm playing E, D, C, A, C, I'm just basically like climbing down the C pentatonic scale. Instead of that, so now here, instead of playing E, D, C, I'm hammering into E, hammering into D, and playing C. And then hammering into A, and then hammering into my final C. So the only one I don't hammer on is the C that's in the middle of this end part of the phrase. Like that. So right? It's a much nicer way than right? And this is still just using hammer-ons. So I'm going to show you a pull-off lick coming up in a second. Okay, so lick 2 uses the same idea of getting into our target note using an articulated articulated approach. That's what I'm looking for. But instead of hammer-ons, we're going to use pull-offs. So we're coming into the target note from above. So our lick without any articulation sounds like this. So we're still over a C major chord. And we're going C, A, C, D, and then G, E, D, G, C. So it's still just C major pentatonic. Like that. But now, if I add articulation, it sounds like this. Right? So like I'm attacking virtually every note with a pull-off. Right? So instead of that, I'm getting like that. And it's just much, much more musical. So I'm pulling off, and then A, C, and then do kind of a long articulation. So I'm hanging down that E for an eighth note, and then getting to that D. And then instead of that, I'm going, which is pulling off to G, pulling off to D, pulling off to C, and then pull off to G, pull off to C. Right? And a lot of this depends on how quick you can do your hammer-ons and pull-ups. You don't have to do them super fast. You can go, right? And you know, the rhythm of how you approach this idea can vary depending on what you're doing. If you're playing a bossa, if you're playing a blues, if you're playing something rock related, if you're playing whatever it is, like this is something that can be put into everyone's arsenal because it's just simply a way of targeting a note. And I need you to remember that whatever note you're trying to get to, don't just play it, get into it a specific way, above or below, attacking it using an articulated approach rather than just centering right in the middle of that pitch, because you know that's fine, and you want some of that. That has to be there. It can't be every single note is slid into from above or below, but you know you want to have some of that. It's a mixture, right? In order to make your phrases sound convincing and sound like you're not so fumbling and looking around for stuff, right? In any case, the next one we're going to do is sliding. We're going to approach notes via a sliding approach. So stick around. Okay, so now we're going to start approaching our articulation from a sliding perspective. And it functions the exact same way. You're just like getting into the target note from above or below using a slide instead of a hammer-on. So in this case, instead of the C major scale, let's go to A minor pentatonic. And let's approach it ascending with slides and descending with slides from above. So. Right, so right away, instead of going, instead of doing that, it's way more musical if you're just sliding into notes. It just sounds better. And like, yeah, I'm doing it to every note. You don't have to do it to every note, but, you know, put it where it's needed. And the same thing descending, right? Right, that kind of a thing. And that was just the pentatonic scale. Now, you can do, like I said, your articulation doesn't have to be immediate. It doesn't have to be a quick grace note. It doesn't have to be. It can be. Right? It depends on the rhythm you want to use. And so you're improvising. While you're improvising, you're kind of making up the rhythms as you go anyway. So just try to fit this idea into your target notes rather than trying to pre-plan licks so much. You know, these licks that I'm giving you are just ideas, right? So in any case, here's a lick that we're going to use for sliding, but first I'm going to play it without any articulation. So here's the lick. All right, so it's easy A minor pentatonic lick or C major pentatonic. Right, so now I'm bending the G, and you could bend it up to A or almost A, and you replace it with the actual A, and then you drop down a string to D, drop to C, and finish that beginning phrase on G. Like that. Sorry. And then the next phrase, sorry. So here, we're going A, C, E, D, C, C. And we do the octave C to end. And then... Okay, so now, if I start adding slides, and I'm going to do a combination of slides, this is what it sounds like. Alright, so very cool, much more melodic. I'll play them back to back. Alright, the second one has way more flavor. And what I'm doing, instead of playing that D, just hitting the center, I'm sliding from a half step above. Drop down to the C, and instead of just playing the G with my index finger down below, I'm sliding from the A. Right there. And then, instead of Instead of that, I'm going like that. And then that's one of the best moves that you can learn how to do, is a quick slide, half step up and back down, followed by a pull off, right? So now I'm incorporating some pull offs down to the C, like that. And then I do a quick slide into my high C, like that. Sorry about that. Right there. So and that is an awesome way to approach music. If you start sliding, combining slides with hammer-ons and pull-offs, all as part of a way of approaching and targeting a note, you'll be way better off for it. So now I'm going to show you a couple licks that combine all of these ideas all in one. So check it out. Alright, so the first lick is a series of double stop licks, and we're staying in the same key, we're staying in C, making things easy. And so this is what the lick sounds like. Okay, so it's a very cool, very melodic double stop idea. And that's how it starts. So we're kind of barring the top two strings on the E and B, like that. And it's just an idea where we're playing the two strings and we're hammering onto the B string within the key. So I'm hammering on the B string from G to A, 8 to 10, and then when I move up, I'm barring the 10th fret and I hammer on from 10 to 12, and then back. So, like that, but the rhythm's not even, it's, and then I pull off from that hammered on A. And then the next segment is a real nice way of approaching a C major chord. I end up fingering the C major chord this way, which is with my pinky, so I'm playing C, E, G, but I start with D and G here. And I hammer on, I'm on the G and B strings, I hammer on from 7 to 9, the D to the E, while that G is ringing above it. And then I add my pinky to the G string, and now I'm pulling off F to E to D. And I hit that B string again. Like that. And then I get my pinky on that C on the 10th fret. And then hammer back on with my ring finger. So the only one of those that's not a double stop is the pinky C. So like that, and then so here, so now I'm doing a quick hammer on, I'm back in my A minor box. I'm doing a hammer on from G to A, playing a double stop on the 5th fret, double stop on 7 and 6, and sliding that up 2 frets. Like that. And essentially, I'm going, that's what I'm thinking, right? Those are my targets. That's how I get into there, and that's how I get into there. And then I reach under with my index finger and grab that high C. And then here's that same idea from before, where I do my quick half step up and back. My quick half step back, but now I'm doing it with a double stop. And then I pull off and then hit the C. Right? And that is, I mean, that's singing. That's using your guitar to sing, right? So that's a good one. Here's the next one. Okay, so here's another lick where we start putting all these things together. This one uses kind of an A harmonic minor scale, so you can think about this over progression like A minor to E7, right? So like that. And this is what the lick sounds like. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm basically just climbing into, like through an A minor 9 arpeggio, E, A, B, C, and then I have my first articulation. Instead of just going back to the beat, like that, I combine two articulations. I do a pull off and slide. So I pull off from D to C and slide back to B. Like that. So I'm actually going through 3 notes to get to my one target note. And then I slide back up to C instead of just going. I slide back in. And then I play my A. Right there. And then the next part. So here, now I'm basically playing E to B, but I'm targeting the B by hammering on from my G sharp. Now the G sharp is part of my E chord, so I'm essentially just outlining an E major arpeggio. But I'm not really hanging on that G sharp. I'm going E, G sharp, B, and doing a quick hammer on. And then to my D, and then my F. Right, so it's kind of like an E7 flat 9 arpeggio. And then I do the same articulation where I do a pull off from G to F and slide down into E. And then roll into my C, play G sharp, and then slide into my A. Like that. Like that. Okay, so our final lick is going to be like more of a country style lick, a country blues sort of thing, and this is what it sounds like. Okay, so we're in A major this time, or I mean you can think of it as being part of the F sharp minor box, but it's over an A7 chord, or an A major chord. So we're doing a real quick hammer on from E to F sharp, and then right into the A. So it's once again it's a 3-note articulation. It's not just one note into A. We're actually going bagada, bagada, right? Right? And that's the idea. So that's the first part of the lick. And each of those hammer-ons into E to F sharp are pretty fast. And then we play C, and we hit it again, but we're doing a 3-note pull-off now. C, B, A. Right there. And then go back to F sharp, A, B. And then we do a quick flurry. So now we're pulling off E to C sharp, and then we're doing a quick slide from C down to B, and pulling that off. From the C we slide down to B and pull off to A. So we're kind of targeting that A, is what we're thinking. But instead of just getting to that A, I get there via a slide and a pull off. Alright? And then I play F sharp and pull off B to A again. So it's kind of like, but instead of that, it's that. And then we do my favorite half-step slide up and down, followed by a pull-off. And then a quick hammer-on from C to C sharp. And that's once again another 3-note articulation. Knock it down, back into A. Right? So. And that's the idea. Now, when you're improvising, you're gonna like try to implement all this stuff all at once, and it's not gonna work. And so what I want you to do is I want you to just like take real simple ideas, like stick to your pentatonic scale and start targeting notes. Like, okay, I'm gonna climb up my pentatonic scale and I'm gonna get to this G right here. I'm gonna go, right? And instead of just playing each note, I'm going to slide into each note and then maybe do a pull off or some other form of articulation to get to the G. So like so I slid into all of those notes. I went, and then I jumped above the G and targeted it by doing a pull off, right? So I didn't come at every note from below, I came at everyone from below except the last one, and then I came from above. And work slowly with this, right? Like take a lick that you know real well, you know, like maybe a blues lick like that, right? So instead of just hitting that C, you know, maybe do an articulation into that C, where I slide back or slide up, right, like that. And then instead of hitting that A twice, just boom boom twice in the center, the second time I slid into it. Way cooler. Or you can slide from above. I mean, the possibilities are endless. You can hammer on it. Pull off, right? The idea is that you take a lick that you're comfortable with, that you know how to play real easily, and start figuring out where your target notes are, what you want to articulate, and how you want to do it, and then work on various ways. Instead of sliding into the C from above, do a pull off, you know? And start trying to think about direction change, right? So if I pull off on one target note, that means I'm coming from above. Maybe the next target note I'll come from below, so that I have all this direction change. And that all of this, like if you can combine this and work this into your playing, your improvisation will be like on the next level. I promise you, I guarantee that. So like always, if you have questions or you need some help or you need some tips running through this, you can email me, max@maxrichmusic.com. And alternatively, take a look at maxrichmusic.com because I have tons of videos and I create a lot of content like this for free. Please sign up for my newsletter where you can get the stuff straight to your inbox and you get a bunch of like secret tips, members only type stuff. And you can find that all on the website there. So I hope to see you there.